During the Renaissance period in Italy, art served many purposes within 15th and 16th century culture and society. While many of the purposes of this commissioned art served to better our own understandings of religion, sexuality, and human nature, art also served as a very important political tool for Italian leaders. During this period, Italian rulers were able to use art to display their power and prestige, not only to fellow members of high courts, but also to society as a whole. Whether this could exist in a ruler commissioning a self portrait or portrait of their family members, or even grand displays decorating the exterior and interior of religious buildings, art served as a key purpose as a method of showing true power. Some art historians have argued that these examples can be even seen as propaganda, especially when considering paintings concerning certain military leaders, showing their strength and battle prowess regardless of their past victory or defeat. These rulers can convey many messages within this art, as well as whether you are referring to military strength, divine authority with religious imagery, and even scenes so mundane as a ruler holding academic tools from the liberal arts to symbolize their own intelligence. This video will discuss how Italian rulers during this Renaissance period commissioned works of art to portray their wealth, power, and prestige. We will focus on the Italian leaders Federico da Montefeltro, Federico Gonzaga and the Gonzaga family, Ercole I d'Este, Isabella d'Este, and even the Pope.
First, we will look at Federico da Montefeltro, the Duke of Urbino. He was a significant patron of the arts during the Renaissance and used art to establish his reputation as a cultured and refined ruler. Federico was a military commander and a scholar, and he commissioned works of art that reflected his military and scholarly achievements. Federico's most significant contribution to the world of art was the decoration of his study in the Palace of Urbino, as we can see here. Federico wanted his study to be designed to reinforce his reputation as a powerful and cultured ruler. The decoration of the study was a deliberate attempt to showcase Federico's achievements and his political power. One of the most famous paintings in the study is The Flagellation of Christ by Piero della Francesca. This painting shows the moment when Christ is being flogged before his crucifixion. The painting is a masterpiece of perspective, with the lines of architecture in the background converging to a single point. This creates a sense of depth and three-dimensionality in the painting, which was an innovation in Renaissance art. Another notable painting in the study is the Madonna of Senigallia by Piero della Francesca. This painting shows the Virgin Mary with the Christ child, surrounded by the saints. The painting is characterized by its calm and peaceful atmosphere, which is enhanced by the soft light and muted colors. Overall, the paintings in Federico da Montefeltro's study in the Palace of Urbino reflect the Renaissance ideals of humanism, intellectualism, and aestheticism. These paintings were intended to inspire Federico in his pursuit of knowledge and to reflect his refinement and sophistication as a patron of the arts.
Second, we will discuss Federico Gonzaga and the Gonzaga family. They served as the rulers of Mantua and served as very important patrons of the arts and cultured rulers during the Italian Renaissance period. This image here is that of Federico Gonzaga. Similar to Federico da Montefeltro, the Gonzagas realized the power of commissioning artwork and used these commissions to their own wealth, power, and cultural prestige. Not only were the Gonzagas influential patrons of the arts, they also served as military commanders and revered scholars. Looking back, it can be seen that the artwork commissioned by the Gonzagas were created to emphasize their successes as military leaders and as scholars. It can be seen that Gonzaga's patrons of the arts was done not only to enhance their own political ambitions, but perhaps more importantly, they wanted to cement their legacies as one of the most influential ruling families in Italy. While we'll be focusing on art and architecture in this video, the Gonzagas also put on fantastic theatrical productions and spectacles for their guests. Perhaps one of the greatest contributions the Gonzagas had to the legacy of Renaissance art was commissioning works by Andrea Mantegna. Mantegna was one artist whose work stressed the military and political accomplishments of the Gonzagas. One of the most influential works painted by Mantegna was The Triumph of Caesar, which showed Caesar entering the city of Rome and was commissioned by Federico Gonzaga. As it pertains to Federico, this painting not only connected himself to the triumphant military achievements of the past, but also connected his rule to the Roman Empire, which in Italy at the time was very important. One of the other significant works done by Mantegna, commissioned by the Gonzagas, was the Camera degli Sposi. This work of art was a series of frescoes or mural paintings that decorated the ducal palace in Mantua. This specific work was commissioned by Ludovico III Gonzaga. The first image here is the north wall. This depicts the court scene. The second image is the west wall, depicting the meeting scene. And finally, this last image shows the ceiling in what is called the oculus, perhaps the most important and most well-known from the Camera degli Sposi. Overall, these works of art serve to display the wealth and power of the Gonzaga family, as well as give the public an image of a royal family with profound sophistication and knowledge. Third, In this video, we would like to discuss the role Ercole I d'Este played in the Italian Renaissance, and use the commissioning of art and more specifically self-portraits to convey his own power and prestige to society. Ercole is primarily known as serving as the Duke of Ferrara in the late 15th century, but we still remember him today for his work as the patron of the arts. Just in the first image seen here, a self-portrait of the Duke, you can see the propagandist aspects of many of his portraits. He is presented in a way where he is wearing a fancy military uniform, where you can see the detail in the patterns on his breastplate and on the style of his hat. Also, more importantly, you can see the emphasis on his right arm and the shiny steel armor, which serves to represent not only his physical strength, but also his military prowess as a leader. In most of the Duke's self-portraits, he is in fact shown in military attire. Looking back, many have argued that these portraits were an attempt by Ercole to reinforce his dominance and his position as the one and only ruler of Ferrara. Similar to the portraits, the Duke also commissioned medals, with his images using both depictions of his head and him on horseback in military attire. The image of the Duke riding a horse is yet another example of him representing himself as a strong military soldier and leader. Not only that, the use of commissioning his own images on coins provides a connection to the Roman emperors of the past, helping him further cement his quote-unquote imperial image. While these works are very important to the legacy of the Duke, military prowess was not the only image of the Duke he wanted to be seen. One other important work tied to the legacy of the Este family was the Sala degli Stucchi in the Palazzo in Ferrara. This magnificent work of art and architecture was commissioned by Borso d'Este, the Duke of Modena, Reggio, and Ferrara in the late 15th century Italy. This palace not only served to show the Duke's wealth and power, but also showed his intellectual and cultural acumen through the use of painting depicting mythological and allegorical scenes covering the walls of the Sala. One facet of this artwork were the frescoes representing 6 of the 7 cardinal virtues: hope, faith, charity, fortitude, prudence, and temperance. Rulers such as Borso d'Este commissioned decorations such as this to symbolize that he embodied these virtues as an Italian leader. He wanted to embody justice itself, looking down at the rest of society. Also, the Este family would use this palace interior to hold diplomatic events, hoping to dazzle other court guests and Italian royals of the perceived power and prestige of the Este family. Overall, Duke Ercole, as well as Borso, used their patronage of art to show the strength and magnificence as military, religious, and just overall cultural leaders dominant in the region.
Fourth, we will look at Isabella d'Este. She was a significant figure in the Italian Renaissance and a powerful patron of the arts. She was one of the most influential women of her time and used art as a method of portraying her own power and prestige. Isabella was an avid collector of art and amassed an extensive collection that included paintings, sculptures, and other works of art. She used her collection to establish her power and prestige and to create a cultural legacy for herself. She was a patron of art not only for her own legacy, but to display that women can also commission art and establish themselves as important members of society. One of the most significant ways that Isabella used art to enhance her reputation was by commissioning portraits of herself by some of the most famous artists of the Renaissance. These portraits were intended to convey her intelligence, wit, and beauty, as well as her political power. For example, the portrait shown on screen by Titan shows Isabella dressed in a luxurious gown with a beautiful complexion, pearls dangling from her ears, and she is covered with a magnificent zazzara, or turban. She commissioned works of art by famous artists such as Andrea Mantegna, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo, which were displayed in her palace in Mantua. Isabella's collection included both classical and contemporary works of art, which reflected her interest in both the ancient world and the modern age. As we can see here on screen, her first commission for a painting was for her study and was awarded to Mantegna for his painting of Mars and Venus. This painting refers to the classical myth of the affair between Mars and Venus, the latter being married to Vulcan, who caught them in bed together and cast a fine net around them for other gods to come and mock their adultery. The lovers are shown standing together on a flat-topped rock arch as the muses dance below. Though she was well known for her role as a Renaissance patron, Isabella also organized cultural events and performances that showcased her knowledge and appreciation of the arts. She hosted elaborate court festivals that included music, dance, and theatrical performances that established her as a tastemaker and cultural leader of the time. Lastly, the Pope has used art as a method of portraying his own power and prestige throughout history, and the frescoes in the Sistine Chapel are a prime example of this. The Sistine Chapel is one of the most significant sites in Vatican City and is considered to be one of the finest examples of high Renaissance art. The frescoes on the ceiling and walls of the chapel were painted by some of the most famous artists of the Renaissance, including Michelangelo, Sandro Botticelli, and Perugino. The frescoes in the Sistine Chapel were intended to be a visual representation of the Catholic Church's power and authority. The frescoes on the ceiling, painted by Michelangelo, depict scenes from the Book of Genesis and are intended to show the power of God and the Church. The painting of the creation of Adam, in particular, is considered to be one of the most iconic images of the Renaissance and has become a symbol of the power of the Church. Michelangelo was inspired by the Genesis phrase, "God creates man in his own image," by drawing two similar bodies, both strong and robust. On the left side is Adam lying on the ground and seems to be waking up, while God on the right side comes from heaven surrounded by angels. The look of God, represented with a long beard and gray hair, is determined, while the look of Adam, represented with a strong young man, seems to be one of naive amazement. The main detail of the fresco is surely represented by the fingers of God and Adam touching each other. God's finger, pointed authoritatively at the man, seems to be ready to give an impulse to Adam's hand, which instead seems as weak as if it were ready to receive energy from the Lord.
After going in depth into the patronage of these great Italian leaders, it is clear that during the Renaissance, it was not uncommon to commission works of art to portray your own power and prestige towards others in Italian society. Whether it is a commissioned self-portrait in military attire, or even the decorations used on a magnificent palace, almost all of this art serves a similar purpose. They can serve to represent strength, power, wealth, intellect, and even divine grace when referring to religious imagery. These rulers also wanted to connect themselves to the Roman emperors of the past through imperial and regal imagery, and use this art to tap into that form of grandeur of the ancient empire. As we look forward to today, leaders still use forms of media to represent their own strength and power, and we can continue to look back and learn about these symbols of power by studying the art commissioned by these rulers during the Renaissance. Thank you.